Welcome to the Business of Hollywood podcast. Succeeding in Hollywood long term is a rare occurrence. I seek out working actors and Hollywood personalities that have made it in Hollywood on a big scale and interview them for this podcast to give advice to today's entrepreneurs. If they can make it in Hollywood, you can make it as an entrepreneur. If you're an entrepreneur, you have to build a personal brand, and that means media. Unless you hire someone, you must become a media company of one. I discuss how to do that in this episode with my guest, Larry J. Namer. Larry J. Namer is a media entrepreneur and co founder of E Entertainment Television, the groundbreaking network that helped redefine how entertainment and pop culture are covered around the world. His career spans more than 50 years across cable television, live events, new media, and international entertainment. We dive into topics including how to build a successful media brand and not end up as just a blip on the public's radar, the importance of staying in one lane with your personal brand and not diversifying too much, how to know which media trends to embrace, the one thing above all else that you need to do to become a media company of one, and other golden nuggets of advice. You're going to love this show. Larry, thank you for making time to do the Business of Hollywood podcast. I appreciate you.
Thanks for having me. It should be fun.
And we're going to talk about a topic of becoming a one-person media company or becoming a media personality before, and things like marketing, branding, of course, technology. We have to touch on what you mentioned, the merger of skills with some generations. But before we get into the tips, the tactics, the strategies, why is media so important to you? It's been a part of your life, obviously, before E, during E, after E. Why is media so important to you that you still love talking about it and living in that world?
Well, I mean, I seem to have a knack for it. So, it's been financially successful. I mean, uh, my parents were immigrants. Their aspiration for their children was get a civil service job to be able to retire at 65. For whatever reason, I didn't take that. But, I jumped into the media world literally right after college, and for what I thought was going to be a summer job. And, here I am 50 years later, still trying to figure out what I do when I grow up. Um, it's fun. I don't really draw the lines between my personal life and my business life. I mean, to me, it's all kind of one thing. It's who I am, what I do.
And things are changing so fast now. You tend to be ahead of trends. When it comes to media, where does it start as far as getting into and embracing media? Where should people start these days?
Well, I mean, I think you've really got to look at um, where and make some assumptions where this is all going. I mean, one of the things that I realized early on, and people are still fighting, you can't fight technology, you can't fight changes in industries and stuff like that. But when I got involved in the media business, literally right out of college, it was a given that if you wanted to make visual content, you had to come to a place called Hollywood. You needed big sound stages and expensive cameras and stuff like that. But as technology kept bringing down the cost and the barriers to entry, um, it became cheaper and less expensive to make media anywhere. So people didn't have to come to Hollywood. And we've got vibrant, creator worlds in literally every part of the planet. And I tell people, I say I could take my iPhone and go to Nigeria tomorrow and make a movie on my iPhone. I mean, so Hollywood has really become a place where, let's call it, a measure of creativity, a measure of quality, but it's not the geographic place you have to be if you want to do visual media.
Well, with so many people getting into media these days, let's say someone that at least has a basic understanding of the technology side of things and all that great stuff. There is so much noise. It's great that, oh, I can become an overnight success, but that's not the case all the time. Where would you advise someone to start? How would you advise someone to start building a personal brand that would cut through the noise since there's so much of it?
Yeah, well, I think you got to look at what's new and what's there out there. And just for me, I've always looked for, and this may sound a little silly, it's I look for opportunities that I could compete with Rupert Murdoch. And I use Rupert as the symbol of the devil. And I say if I want to start XYZ, whatever it is, what's going to happen when Rupert finds out that I'm doing it? Because he could cover it with more money and, more effort and more people and stuff like that. So you got to look at what's out there now, and it's a great opportunity to jump in the media world because things are changing so dramatically. The way things get created, the way they get financed and stuff, and you've got now what everybody's calling the creator economy, and it doesn't take a lot of money to create media properties and stuff. So social media, great place to start, and test ideas and stuff and see what resonates with audiences. And can you build audiences of like mind with whatever the concept is? And, now everybody is talking about vertical or micro dramas. Very inexpensive to get in there and to test anything. You don't have to do TV pilots that cost hundreds of thousands of dollars. You can do little micro dramas, which cost literally, you can do them for hundreds of dollars.
I love what you said about not just building an audience, which can be random, but an audience of like minds. Could you speak more to that? How do you intentionally build an audience of like minds, not just a bunch of random people?
Yeah, I think what you're looking to do is build a community of people that are interested in the subject matter. So every time you come out with a new piece of content, you don't have to market it specifically. But yeah, I mean, just look at what happens with Steven Spielberg. And again, a lot of stuff is not new. It's just adopting what was old to new technology. When Spielberg has built a community of people that just know and love Spielberg. So when he comes out with a new movie, he doesn't have to tell me what the movie is and spend a lot of money marketing it. It's from Steven Spielberg, and I'm in that movie theater literally the next day. So you want to build that community. The keywords these days, I think, are authenticity. That look at you as a creator of authentic content that resonates with their interests, and then they follow you around.
I'd love to touch on something. What if there is a difference? What's the difference between an audience and a community?
Well, I think an audience is more on a single project. I mean, somebody will watch a show, but how do I get them to watch whatever Larry Namer creates? So to me, that's a community built around my sensibility, my morality, my interests, and stuff. An audience is, say, here's a new show I did, watch it tonight at 8 o'clock, or, stream it on Hulu or whatever. Um, so I think it's just continuity, and it's this blind acceptance. It's almost blind. Like I said, Spielberg, great example. I don't have to know what the movie's about. You don't have to spend any money telling me what it's about. You tell me it's a Spielberg movie, I'm there because I know what I'm going to get. I know the level of quality I'm going to get. I know the level of storytelling I'm going to get.
Well, let's say someone they've built at least a small community, but it's not an audience for a project, but what you just defined a community as. Once you build it, what do you do to foster and grow a community of like minds?
Well, it used to be that you did it all with kind of a single effort of the media, publicity and stuff like that. But now you need to be multifaceted. I mean, you need to have your social media, you need to have your Instagrams and your TikToks and your Facebooks and your X's and all of those things as as a way of that constant communication with this community. And now, one of the ways that I include in literally everything that we do is tying podcasting into it. I think when you get to niche audiences, there's no more efficient way in literally every way than having a podcast where your audience are people of like mind or community of people of like mind.
When you're discussing community on that topic, do you think that does community then build your brand once you've built it, or does a brand build a community, or does it fall somewhere in the middle?
It falls a little towards the middle, but it's um, a lot of it has to do with what you're all about, what your sensibility is, um, what your points of authenticity is. Like I've got a new podcast coming out in September. I've been doing a lot of stuff, all which has to have kind of a social impact component. So it's not just about the money. So we're doing something on immigration where basically we're showing, immigrants who have come to this country that you may not realize it, but how much positive stuff they brought to your everyday life, and stuff. So the audience for that, we're already building audience before we're even on the air. And, it's people interested who realize that essentially we're a nation of immigrants, um, and that there are so many things we have to be thankful for. And that there's a huge difference between legal immigration and illegal immigrants or border control and stuff like that. So, we're building a community there, getting it ready for the launch in September.
I love that you mentioned and that you're living, creating social impact. I think that's important. It's for entrepreneurs or anyone, especially for entrepreneurs building a brand, to make that a leg of their brand. Will you unpack that a little bit? Why is social impact important to you when you can do anything you want?
Well, I think as media people, we do have an obligation to try and bring some good to this planet, to our everyday lives, to people across the globe, not necessarily in a single country. Um, we're all on this planet for a finite amount of time. I mean, some of us will live a little bit longer than others, but essentially we're all the same. And my feeling is we were put here for the purpose of leaving it a better place, whether it be relationship to other people, to animals, to the environment. And I think we have an obligation that we have to put some social impact into everything we do. That's not all about profits. There has to be, profits absolutely needed to be able to sustain any media vehicle. But at the end of the day, can we instill some social impact components, or can we do good with it? And I think we could. Media is very effective at moving mindset, moving audiences to a certain place mentally. I think, with the one we're doing with immigrant, there are so many things out there. I think people have just lost the narrative of how important immigration has been to the growth of the history of this country. So we feel we have this obligation to kind of help straighten that. The other one that I think is really, really important, and I was just at VidCon as a featured speaker, is how important the mental health crisis is, and what the obligations of people in media to be conscious of it, and the fact that they can put their media to work to help resolve some of those issues. It's not going to solve everything, but we can help lessen the impact of some of these mental health issues if we pay attention to it and incorporate those kind of elements into the media we create.
You already touched on it with social impact. That's a part of what I'm going to ask you. Once someone realizes, wow, let's say at least with a small community, I have built a brand. How do you build a brand even higher and not just end up, which I can imagine is I know is so easy in entertainment. Can you build a brand and not just be a blip on someone's radar?
Well, I think you got to be let's call it multimedia, multifaceted. You can't just be one thing. Um, I'll give you a good example. I'm doing this project now called Natasha After Dark. Natasha is one of the leading female motivational speakers in this country. And so we're building a nighttime talk show around her. But, we've already put up the podcast, we've already put up the website, and I've just finished building, and we're in beta now. I've actually had a digital twin of Natasha built. So she's done over 200 podcasts and TED Talks. And so we literally built digital Natasha so that even when she's not on the air or not in the podcast or not in the TV show, you could have a relationship with her. And quite honestly, we've ingested so much that it really it's almost her. If I didn't know that it was not real her, I would be fooled by it. And I've been training it as if it was a TV talk show host. So it's got all the movements and facial expressions and stuff like that. And I try and fool it, and I ask it questions I know we didn't put in the computer, and it
Yeah.
answers as it's crazy. It answers as if it's really her. So that's the way that people who want to have a relationship with the community of Natasha um, have 24-hour a day, 7 day a week access to something that she does.
Well, once you build a community and continuing on what you just said, what ways can you market the community to grow it so you don't just say, I have, X number of people in my community. How do you double it or how do you grow it?
Well, I mean, yeah, you could look at if you could define that audience. I mean, not just quantify it, but define it. I mean, these are people, under 30 who believe whatever, whatever. More and more, there's not a brand on the planet now that is not looking for how they have a deeper, richer relationship with the media that they used to just stick ads in. They don't want to just stick ads in media anymore. They want to figure out how they can have this level of interaction or engagement with that audience and stuff. So you could, if you've got a defined audience, um, you could find brands that are looking to reach that audience and basically monetize the whole thing.
So when you're building the community, is it done through ads? Where do you stand with doing marketing in a somewhat traditional sense as opposed to say guerrilla marketing? Does the community build the community? Do you do it? Is it somewhere in the middle of the two?
It's a lot built on social media. I mean, our favorite today, if we had to pick two favorites, for younger audience, it's Instagram. For a little bit older audience, it's Facebook. And there's a bunch in between and stuff, but those are really good for building audiences or communities of like mind, where you know people. I find like my Instagram followers now are very heavily people who are trying to break into acting, producing, or directing. They want to break into the business from that side, and so I do tutorials on casting and under helping those actors understand what is it that the casting people are really looking for, and how you really do it to maximize your chances of success for whatever it is you're going after. So yeah, to me, it's social media today.
So what can an entrepreneur do to create interaction with the community? What does that look like?
Well, again, it's multifaceted. So you need social media. You need. I think you absolutely should have a podcast, and then you could look at the the next level when you start to see the audience. You could build YouTube channels um, and stuff there. And then it becomes, when you start using terms like channel and you've got more than one thing on it, um, it becomes much easier for brands to get beside it and kind of, because they kind of know where you're going on a consistent basis and they can judge whether they want their brand to rub up against it. Does it match their brand message? More and more, you're finding just every brand out there is trying to figure out how they fit in this new world. I mean, the days of just sticking 30-second commercials into linear TV are shot. It's gone. Um, I mean, it'll dwindle out over time, but my advice to everybody is, start thinking about what will be and forget about what was, because what was is basically going to be. My guess is 2030 is media the way we knew it or the way I grew up with it will be kind of second to what's coming next.
Well, we're talking with the idea of personal branding. What's your definition? And I'll use air quotes. What's your definition of a successful personal brand? How do you know when you've been successful at personal branding?
Um, well, when yeah, yeah, a lot of times now it's really crazy because I actually get recognized in a supermarket, which just amazes me. Um, it's when people began, you could start to tell that people, particularly on my Instagram, that they're feeling very comfortable with, having a conversation with me, leaving comments and stuff, and they know they'll get, some feedback. And we answer just about everything that is out there. Instagram probably more so than anything. That's the easiest one for us to deal with. But, you know, is just see how the audience is relating.
Well, you mentioned I'll use the word approachable. Once someone starts to build a brand, and I can imagine popularity can go to the head pretty quick. How do you avoid the pedestal syndrome, or how do you avoid not being viewed as I'm up here, you're down there, like my Instagram post? What do you do to be accessible and not be on a pedestal?
Yeah, I try and tell people, don't take what people say about you too seriously, whether it's good or bad. I, you define yourself in basically how you feel about yourself. I mean, I get people write about me all the time, and I've just learned that, it doesn't make a difference what they feel; it's how I feel and stuff like that. I mean, I get now, when I years ago, people used to think I was nuts. They go, that guy's ideas are so weird. He must be on drugs or something. Because a lot of my shows, like, Talk Soup and things like that, when, I told the crew I want to do a TV show that makes fun of TV shows, they all went, you can't do that. It's crazy. And, Talk Soup went on to be, 26 years. And, then when I put cameras in Howard Stern's radio studio and stuff like that. But it's gone from he must be on drugs to now, and it makes me laugh because now I'm a visionary. Um, and like I say, uh, don't take it seriously, whether it's good or bad. It's just basically it's how you feel, and who cares what anybody else thinks.
Well, I know the answer for you for advice for the entrepreneur side, people watching. Once you've built a successful brand, you get the audience for your projects, you have a community that's ongoing. Do you recommend staying in a niche, staying in your lane, or do you recommend diversifying? When do you do that? What does it look like of here's me, but what if you want to expand it? Do you recommend diversifying or just staying in one lane?
I think stay in one lane. I tell people, find something you're good at, work your butt off, and become great at it. And then that becomes literally that becomes your passion and stuff, and lets you. It gives you the financial wherewithal to play around with other stuff, which for the most part, I think people have hobbies that they go after. I've always found, stay even though a lot of what I do is different, I'm pretty much all in the same lane. I'm in, media development on a global scale. Um, and, it's pretty wide, so it gives me a lot of leeway and, latitude to do different things, but all within that media sphere.
How do you know what media channels to pick when you're building?
Um, Look at who's the audience that I think will be the most receptive to the messages that I want to get out with any given project, and where do I find that audience? I mean, for me, a lot of the stuff that I do now, is people 20 to 40. And, I find them on Instagram and social media, other social media. YouTube channels are great now. I mean, they deliver, I think now more people watch TV on YouTube than on any other channel out there, which is crazy. Um, but yeah, just look at, the audience wins. The audience will always win. Forget about, what technologies that, Time Warner wants you to use or whatever. The audience, it's very simple. You as a human being, you want to watch what you want to watch, when you want to watch it, on the device you want to watch it on. And you couldn't care less what NBC thinks you should be watching on Thursday night at 8 o'clock on, a 65-inch TV. It's the audience will always win. Don't forget that.
Well, if the audience wins, let's go back to marketing. With the audience wins in mind, and you have to build a community, give them what they want, and interact with them. Could you unpack marketing a little more? What kind of things can you do to build even higher?
Yeah, well, I think, it were a very interesting time again, because I just came from VidCon, where, it's astounding how many young creators, content creators there are out there, and the sophistication out there. But, the one thing that I noticed there, people go, we're going to replace everything that came before. And I'm going, I've heard that story probably 5 or 6 times in my lifetime now. You know, cable is going to replace the movie theaters, and then HBO will replace cable and the internet and Betamaxes, and they're all part of the landscape. None of them totally replace it. They may have different proportions within it, and but I think we're going to see this next generation of media companies that really arise where young creators who understand the audience and a part of, a lot of them are part of that audience, get together with legacy media people. And because legacy media people understand the things that these younger folks don't, which is the importance in how you get distribution, how you do, production, and, how you monetize, how you sell sponsorships or sell licenses and stuff like that. So I think the people that learn to embrace both sides and get together and realize they need each other, that will be the next generation of media company.
You had mentioned something before I hit record, and I think it plays into this. Tell me if I'm on point. Where does merger of skills play into what you just said?
Well, I think that's really what it is. It's taking, the things that, let's call legacy media folks do well and merging those with this audience building. I mean, look, I'm not a 17-year-old kid anymore and I can't think like one. But you know what? I surround myself with those folks and stuff, and I've learned to listen to them because they understand their colleagues and their friends much better than I could ever do it. And my even you look at my company in China, everybody's under 30, and they're born and raised in China. They went to school in the West, and they're part of my writers' room. And I've just learned that if I'm going to be successful in creating programming in a language I don't speak for a country I didn't grow up in, I better learn to take the skills that I have, which are storytelling. I know how to structure stories so that audiences respond to them, but they understand the audience needs and the audience thinking better than I ever could. So we need each other. It's a combination of both.
With that in mind, what do you, when it comes to the age, because it gets huge these days, depending on what area of media business you're in, what do you recommend for merging the different ages, the different audiences? How do you merge across generations?
Well, social media is great for that. But then, like I say, there are certain of these events or conventions that I think you need to get out there and meet people. Like I say, I just came from VidCon, and I probably got 10 people that I'm going to follow up with because I think there's opportunities me to for they to have things that I don't have, and me to bring a lot of history and experience that they don't have. So I could kind of shorten the time frame to success for a lot of these people, who just think they're going to conquer the world tomorrow. And I've learned that it doesn't happen that quickly, even though you wish it would.
Well, with what you just said, it's easy if someone's a figurehead, the face of the company, the face of a movement, things like that. Do you believe that do they surround themselves with a great team? Does a lone wolf truly exist? Where do you fall on that spectrum?
Well, I mean, I'm a huge team builder person. I mean, I think that everybody I hire has to be smarter in their area than I am. Like I know how to edit and I know how to write and I know how to do all that stuff. But if I hire an editor, they better know how to edit better than I can. Otherwise, why do I need to hire them? So I'm really into building teams of people smarter than me in little every specific area. But overall, I know how to manage that group and get the most out of the group. I think now you see a lot of resistance among legacy media people there. They're just scared of where it's all going. And, now with AI and, people, oh my God, it's going to replace us. There's so many opportunities that it brings that you got to learn to embrace it and, realize that it's not going away. And you could be part of it if you start to pay attention and realize you need to build teams that understand it better than you personally can.
Well, obviously, you've lasted a long time in this field. When it comes to longevity in the media world, What do you recommend people do? Because everything is not sunshine and unicorns. When the rough times hit, and they inevitably will, what advice do you have to keep on keeping on during those times?
Well, again, just keep looking for where it's going as opposed. I mean, understand where it's been because I think there are lessons can be learned from history. But, start to project out. I mean, now I hear everybody is looking at, this area of vertical drama and, or verticals. And, I look at them, they're basically soap operas on steroids. I married the secret billionaire's brother, or, I married the alien, had the alien's baby. Um, and everybody thinks that it's going to stay in that area. And there's a lot of money going in and a lot of people doing them. Everybody's announcing they're doing these vertical dramas now. And, I look at it and say, okay, right now it's soap operas on steroids or the romance, it's basically throwback to the romance novels of the 80s. Um, but, I'm going, I understand that. What's next, though? My feeling is, first of all, I think by 2030, the predominant way of viewing video is going to be vertical, not horizontal. And you'll see other genres pop in there. I mean, if I had to guess right now, I'd say the next genres up that'll enter the vertical world are going to be sci-fi and horror.
With everything we're talking about and the technology and AI, even social media, how do you know what trends to embrace when you could go 10 or 20 different directions, probably literally? How do you know what to embrace?
Well, I hate to say it, but a lot of it is gut. Um, I'm very much against doing a lot of like hard research on on stuff, particularly when creative. I mean, I always found in Hollywood when I pitch an idea, and as soon as I say to someone, "Just imagine," I lose them because they can't imagine. So I like to get projects to the point where I can show you something and go, "Here's what I'm thinking," so that we both get on the same page. And like I said, with new technology, it's amazing. I mean, now you could get you could do little pilots and you could do shorts and you could do everything um, to create these, real representations of what it is you're trying to pitch. And it's not like it's a few $100,000 to do a pilot anymore. Literally, if you gave me an idea by this afternoon, I can run it through C Dance or uh, one of those projects out there, and one of those apps, and I could create the demo for it by tomorrow. Um, so learn how to use all these things because they give you the opportunity to visually represent the things that are in your head.
We have covered a lot of ground in a short period of time, whether you're talking about becoming a media company of one or at least embracing media, building a brand, an audience, communities. If you were to tell someone watching or listening, if you're going to embrace and excel in the media world, you have to do at least this one thing, at least do this one thing right. What would you tell people to do?
Is just embrace the new world because that's where it's all going, particularly in the technology thing. I mean, AI is one of the most amazing production tools you could ever find. Um, Learn how to use the programs, learn how to prompt, and use it as a creation tool, as opposed to think of it as your enemy.
This has been awesome. And if people want to find you online, learn more about your project, what's the best place or places to go?
Well, if you want to, find my little bits of wisdom, you go to Instagram. It's Larry Namer TV, at Larry Namer TV. If you want to learn about my cooking, go to my Facebook page, the Larry Namer Facebook page, which is essentially my food blog.
Larry, this has been awesome. I appreciate you. Thank you for making the time.
Thanks for having me.
And scene.